Good evening to all. Welcome to the inaugural meeting on our virtual platform, Adarsh Vidya Connect. The school having gone virtual, we need a platform to conduct all our newly designed programs. Hence, this Adarsh Vidya Connect. This is the vision of our chairman, the mission of our principals, and with the passion of the staff will be a cushion, that is, support to the students. This platform will connect the students and parents to experts in various fields all around the world. I take great pleasure in welcoming the celebrity of the month, Mr. Rahul Venugopal, a leading digital matte painter and compositor currently working in London. I welcome him on behalf of the chairman, principals, staff, parents, and students. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you.
I welcome our Honorable Chairman, Dr. Gopal Surendran, who always dreams big and achieves big. Today, yet another of his dream is coming true. I welcome him on behalf of the principals, staff, parents, and students. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I also welcome all the members of the management to this inaugural event on behalf of all. My welcome goes to Mrs. Malini Venugopal, the principal of Punarkulam campus of Adarsh Vidya Kendra and the advisor of Adarsh schools. I welcome her on behalf of everyone present here. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Presently, I welcome Mr. Venkateshwaran, the principal of the senior school wing, Adarsh Vidya Kendra, Vetturi Madam campus. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, ma'am.
Now, I welcome Mr. Binamon, the principal of the senior secondary wing of Adarsh Vidya Kendra on behalf of everyone present here. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
My special warm welcome to all the parents who, in spite of their busy affairs, have joined us here. I welcome each one of them. I also welcome the students for whom the platform has been designed. Welcome you all. May I now request our Honorable Chairman, Dr. Gopal Surendran, to felicitate the gathering. Please, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening
Good evening, sir.
all the principals and the celebrity of the evening, Rahul, the parents, children. It is wonderful to be a part of this program, the first outreach program of Adarsh Vidya Connect. So today, having Rahul with us as our first guest is indeed something to be proud of, because having known him for a long time and having seen his work in action, I'm really proud to have him here with us today in front of you all, because I know what he can do and I've seen what he can achieve also. So I truly know that he can inspire you all. I'm very sure most of you must have seen all these animations like Avengers Endgame and Interstellar and all that. Well, his hands are there somewhere in all the movies. So it should be a very interesting evening. And I'm not prolonging my talk. Let me welcome Rahul on our family's behalf. Welcome, Rahul, and we look forward to an enjoyable evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
let me start out. Can I share my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah, but just a moment, sir. Can I just say a few words about you?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's my privilege to introduce the man of the month of Adarsh Vidya Kendra Connect. He is a matte painter, a compositor, graphic designer, a man who has worked with artists across the world. He is none other than Mr. Rahul Venugopal. Mr. Rahul Venugopal is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Venugopal. As we all know, Mrs. Malini Venugopal is currently the principal of Punarkulam campus of Adarsh Vidya Kendra and the advisor of Adarsh schools. After pursuing his higher secondary in commerce stream, he completed his diploma in the School of Audio Engineering during 2005-2006. He went on to complete his Bachelor of Arts degree in SAE Singapore and Middlesex UK during 2006-2008. His honors study involved research in cyberpunk genre and use of matte painting in films. Matte painter is someone who digitally paints realistic environments that could not have been otherwise created or visited. Mr. Rahul Venugopal has the pride of working in projects such as Expandable 2, Olympus Has Fallen, Erlam River, Badrinath, etc. as matte painter and compositor. In the words of his colleagues, Mr. Rahul is a highly talented team man known for creativity and technical knowledge. He has worked in Singapore, London, US, Canada, and many other countries. Here, he is with us this evening to connect himself on the Adarsh Vidya Connect platform. Now, it is over to you, Mr. Rahul. Please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very well introduction. So that means my presentation would be a little bit shorter. I don't have to do that. So let me start with sharing my. So I'll take you to, I hope you all can see my screen. Can you?
Yeah.
Okay. My voice is fine. It's not breaking or anything.
Yes.
Yes.
Your voice.
Okay. So this is my website. As you have just heard, I've worked on these projects. I'm a visual effects artist, currently working in London in a studio called Framestore. Framestore has worked on Avatar, Avengers, you name any superhero movies, probably they would have worked on it. So I'll start with showing you some of my work I've done. This work is a bit old, but I haven't updated my portfolio, but you'll still see some of what I've done during 2017-18 when I was working in Toronto, Canada. I'll just talk through in this place. If it doesn't work, I'll skip to I'll skip to the presentation. I'll come back to it later. I think it's taking time, so let's skip that. It's coming. Okay. So this is mostly a compositing work I have done when I was in Rocket Science, a studio called Rocket Science, mainly TV shows. I'll get to what is compositing, what is matte painting, what is digital environments later in my presentation. So as you can see, some space shots. This was from a TV show called The Expanse. I think right now it's streaming on Amazon Prime. It's a very interesting TV show. I worked on it for nearly a year. A lot of science fiction shots, and I'm a big fan of science fiction. It's one of the reasons why I joined this industry. From a very childhood, I was into science fiction. So it was really a rewarding experience to work on science fiction shows like these, and also had worked on recently on Ad Astra. That's a science fiction movie, and Interstellar as well. So yeah, that's the end of this particular reel. I have a couple of other reels here. I'm not gonna bore you with all of that. You can watch it if you go to my website. It's rkbfx.com. You can see my work, my personal projects I've done during my free time, and some of the other stuff. Like I mentioned, Ad Astra, you can see here what I've done on Ad Astra. I'll come back to this later. Now I'll jump to the presentation I have prepared for all of you. Was it all right? Was it all right? My voice is fine because it just keeps showing bad network here, so I'm just. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'll continue. So this presentation is going to be about introduction to visual effects. I'll talk about how visual effects started and what it is now, and the future of visual effects. And if you're interested in visual effects, why you should join visual effects. So we'll go through it. So as we have already talked about who I am, I'm just going to skip this part. And yeah, these are some of the companies I've had, privilege to work throughout my career. These are some big names, especially like DNAG, MPC, Framestore, Mr. X, and Makuta. Makuta, I had worked in Makuta back in 2011. I had, privilege to work on this movie called Nani. That was in Tamil, and Iga in Telugu, the name, the movie about the fly. I hope you all have seen it. Worked on Badrinath, the Telugu movie, then Era Maravu, Surya's movie, Tamil movie. So those were the few Indian movies I worked on when I was in Makuta VFX in Hyderabad. And this Makuta VFX is the same studio which later went on to work on the most successful Indian movie, Bahubali. I'm sure you all know that one. So yeah, they are a big name in India. So let's talk about visual effects. What is visual effects? You know, when we hear that term these days, people say graphics, computer graphics, special effects, animation. These are the common terms they associate when they see something in movies, right? But what is actually it? You know, this is a very well established industry, and we have to really take into account like how it is done. So the term visual effects is basically anything that is created or manipulated an image for the process of making a feature film. And a feature film, when they say it's a live action feature film, as in when people go out and shoot and create a feature film, when they take that feature film and then they manipulate or create a particular image and add into it, and that is called visual effects. So it's not really animation, because animation can be cartoon, you know, animation you see, or it could be like computer animation, like the 3D computer animation you see. So these are all really broad terms. You know, a lot of things come under animation. And computer graphics is again a very broad term. A lot of fields use computer graphics. It's not just, you know, movies. Computer graphics is used in even in hospitals, or, you know, space engineering, or everywhere. It's used everywhere. And special effects is very closely related with visual effects. And it has a historical touch to it as well. We'll talk about it soon. But these days, special effects, when we use that term in the industry, it's mostly got to do with whatever they do when they produce the film, as in when they do go and shoot the film. If they do an explosion, that is special effects. That happens when they are shooting, right? So that is special effects. It is not visual effects. Visual effects happens after they shoot, when they do post-production. You know, we have basically three terms while we do a movie. Pre-production, when we do scripting, when we think about the ideas, when we do, like, you know, basic concept, that is pre-production. Production is when we go out and shoot the film, and then we, you know, edit, like to add visual effects, that is post-production. So visual effects comes under post-production. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about history of visual effects. So visual effects has always been there. I mean, it has a 100 years history. You know, it started right from the birth of filmmaking. Especially with this movie, A Trip to the Moon. You can watch this movie for free on YouTube. It was directed and produced by this visionary guy called George Méliès. He's from France. So he was a technocrat and a filmmaker, you know, and he was also, you know, a stage magician. So he kind of combined all these things into his movie making process. And this is exactly what we do nowadays as well. We combine technology, we combine the artistry and sort of a magic, and we create visual effects, you know, what you see on the screen. So this is where all it started. You know, this is a very important movie in history of filmmaking. So as you can see, I just grabbed a few screenshots from this movie. You can see, like, images here, like, that is out of this world. Basically, this shows, like, this few people going to the moon, right? So you can see backgrounds here. That is outer space, that is moon landing. It's very primitive. Imagine this was almost done like 100 years ago. This is like the first science fiction movie ever made. So a lot of stage, practical visual effects or practical special effects. Back in the day, they only called it special effects. There was no visual effects at that time. So these are called backdrops. So basically these painted backdrops are creating the environment. Okay, so why? Because we have to do that because obviously it is impossible to go and shoot out in the outer space or moon. So you have to create these environment, that can't be shot, practically. So that's the environment work, and later the environment work progressed into something called matte painting. This is a term they developed probably around 1920s, 1930s in Hollywood. So the technique matte painting started with very simple, idea, like you can see here. So you can see these people, they put the camera here and they done a painting here and they're shooting something behind. This is called forced perspective, and you can actually try it at home. And if you want to, learn a little bit about it, go and Google forced perspective camera move. So you can actually fit like a building into whatever you're shooting, within the perspective of this camera. And this is something that can be easily done with a mobile phone camera. It's very interesting. There's a lot of possibilities with this technique, and we still use it sometimes to this day. It's a very primitive technique, but very useful. So that was that, the start of matte painting during 1920s and 30s. Later, it evolved into, much more complicated process. As you can see here, these paintings were really larger than life, and a lot of science fiction environments were painted. And other things, the visual effects evolved into was creature. You create these monsters and creatures, dinosaurs. These were all done using a technique called animatronics. Basically, these were like mechanical creature work. This was like a famous animatronics called Ray Harryhausen. Some of his movies from like 1950s are really famous, like Sinbad the Sailor. And you can see what like on this part of the slide, you can see miniature. Later it evolved into the same technique of creating environments using paintings. It evolved into building these miniature models. Okay. And the advantage of having miniature models is that, obviously you could take your camera and move through these miniature model and make it look like it's an actual cityscape that was shot with camera. So this sort of technique was used a lot during 1970s, 80s, like Star Wars, Blade Runner. And another thing is they also done explosions. They could shoot big explosion happening in a city using the same technique as, within the miniature. It could be explosion, it could be a twister, it could be a wind effect. All these things can be emulated in a safe environment inside a studio within a small miniature set. Then I want to talk about later in early 90s, where we have Jurassic Park. The animatronics were much more advanced and more real looking. But this was a time when they were slowly, shifting into computer digital age, because computers were getting more powerful during that time, during 1994, 1992. and it was a mix of miniature, digital computer visual effects, plus adding the special effects they've been doing for past many years behind. So here you can see this is the very iconic Jurassic Park entrance. This was built in a miniature. So that is that. I hope you guys got a very brief idea about history of visual effects. And I just want to talk about where it is now today. So whatever they've done using miniatures and using matte painting technique, we're just doing it digitally now. And as you can see, I've captured few shots from Bahubali. You can see the environments, all this foliage, all these details are created in computer, and then we combine it together into the shot live action film footage, right? That process is called compositing. That's one of the thing I specialize in, and I also specialize in creating the matte paintings. That is like basically the digital environments what you see behind. So here you can see there's two things happening here. There's water. We'll talk about that later. And then we have the matte painting here, the environment. Same here. So nowadays, we shoot everything against a green screen, and then we replace the green screen with whatever we want. It's very flexible. We create everything in computer. Back in the day, these miniatures were very expensive to build, and also you have to take in account you create this miniature in a studio backload, you shoot the miniature, then they demolish the miniature, then they can't change it. But now everything is done in computer. Everything can be changed, at the director's request. So it's very flexible, efficient, and cost effective. And what you can create is immense. You shoot somebody like this, and then you can replace, the whole background into like possibly like hundreds of kilometers and expansive world, which is impossible to do in the real world. So that's so I was talking about the water, right? That is another aspect. Like previously, these explosions, these these wind effects were all done inside the miniature, and they were not really effective. But now, with the advancement in the computer, we can do amazing fire, water, or like wind effects, and these are not animated. What we can't animate it because these are way too complicated for humans to imagine, right? How a fire would behave, how a building would explode and collapse. So basically, there's a whole section in VFX right now that is called simulation. So we simulate, like those computer programmers with will create a software that will simulate how these buildings will collapse. If you have seen Game of Thrones, you have seen the wall collapsing, or this big monster from, I think this movie is Clash of the Titans. This monster, it's made up of fire, and there's like a lava burning inside. They would actually calculate how this lava would burn inside, how it would move. It's a lot of calculation based in physics. So there are actually like people who have master degrees or doctorate in physics working in the studio. It's not just artists. So this is something that people overlook. Uh, it's a very technically demanding work that we do. And like, for example, in Interstellar, we had to simulate uh, how you would see a black hole. So they actually went and simulated based on the rules of physics, and that paper was later published as a science paper. So it's very technically accurate. A lot of visual effects we do. So go to the next one. Another thing, the something with computer, what we've seen in the last 5 years is performance capture. Last 5 to 10 years, I would say, starting with Avatar and Lord of the Rings. Uh, they have found a way to capture the performance of artists, like actors basically, and put that into a digital character, and that opens up immense possibilities, as you can see. You've seen, I don't know whether you've seen this movie. If you haven't, I would highly recommend watch it. Alita, it's a really good one. And the reason Lion King is another example. Of course, there's no performance capture here, but I just want to talk about the creature work. These are another thing that we have seen in the last 10 years. We are able to produce highly photorealistic, creature. Like it could be a lion, it could be even a monster like Godzilla. These are highly accurate, highly photorealistic creature work. And we start from this skeleton. We go from how the tissue would move, how the fur would interact. So it's very scientifically and technically accurate, all these creatures. And that's the only way to emulate the nature, because nature is the most complicated thing out there, and there's no cheating. You can't cheat it, because if you don't have the muscle tissue movement right, when you look at the baby lion, you would know it's fake. It's like, that this cub is not walking right. You would right away know. And even like a 10-year-old kid can tell. So these things, there's no cheating. So it has to be scientifically accurate. So even though we are doing art, we take the science very, very seriously. So a lot of programming skills is needed. A lot of artistic vision is needed. It's a very exciting field when it comes to visual effects, because it's a very diverse medium, and a lot of people with a lot of different background contribute to creating these big movies you see. So I'll go to the next one. So let's talk about how it is done, right? I talked about the pre-production, the production, and post-production when it comes to filmmaking. So obviously, visual effects happens in the post-production stage. But even in post-production stage, we have so many things happening, and visual effects is only a part of it. So let's go deep into visual effects for now. And with visual effects also, there are a lot of things that we need to conceptualize. We need to visualize, because there is no way, like if it's like a monster, you don't know how the monster would look. Or if it's like outer space, like if the whole movie happens in Mars, you don't know how the Mars is looking. So you have to do a lot of pre-production inside the computer to imagine how these things are done, right? So that process is called pre-visualization. We pre-visualize how a creature would look, or how the environment will be. We do a lot of concept art for that, and then we also do like really rough animation and figure out how these things would end up looking. So that process is called pre-visualization. Then we get to a stage called camera, match, move, and layout. Basically, that is, we take the live action camera into computer, right? We analyze the film, and then we need to copy the camera movement and create a virtual set based on that camera. Only then we can add our environment or our characters into the film, right? So that is one process. And another process is building the assets, basically building the environments, building the character, right? That is another thing. And then later we get into animation, animating all these things to look how it should in the actual film. Then I talked about the simulation and effects. Basically, that is mainly got to do with all the explosions and natural elements that can't be animated, that has to be simulated. And at the end, we have this process called compositing. Basically, we'll take all these things, we'll have an image, and then we have to match this image to the live action footage we have. And that process is called compositing. And that's the last process. And all these processes I mentioned before, they're not linear in the structure. It could be a iterative process. By that I mean pre-visualization could happen even when this FX and simulation is going on, or animation could happen at the camera match move level. So it could be a mixed process at that stage. But compositing is at the very end. So that's a very brief, idea about how visual effects is done. Uh, it could, like, each and every process, there's like a lot of subsets and a lot of specialization. Like I mentioned matte painting before. Matte painting these days comes under digital environments over here. And matte painting, even matte painting has several subdivisions, like 3D matte painting, 2D matte painting, 2.5D matte painting. That's all. Like, if you are interested, you can research about it. All these informations are available in Google these days. So let's talk about where visual effects is going. We have real-time virtual production. That is something that is happening right now, because right now we are all stuck in home, and unfortunately in the past 2-3 years there's been a movement in this visual effects. Like, we are able to do virtual productions. What is virtual production? Basically, people, the director can sit in India and the team can be in London or in Canada or anywhere, and they can all come together like we are right now, and they can create the camera movement, the character, everything inside the computer. And sometimes they can even put on the virtual reality, the headset, right? I hope you all seen that one, the new technology. And they can actually feel like they are inside a film studio, and they are actually seeing mountains or outer space planet or whatever, right? And the characters are moving around, and they can actually hold the camera and shoot over everything just by staying inside home. And everybody, the director could be from Cochin, and the cinematographer could be in Los Angeles, and the actor could be in London, but everybody can come together and do a virtual production, and that's the future. And we are almost there right now. We are, because of this COVID crisis, things are moving in that way. It's accelerated that process. And another industry that's coming up is virtual reality and augmented reality. I hope you have some idea about virtual reality. Putting the headset on, and we are already inside the virtual environment. There was a recent movie from Steven Spielberg called Ready Player One. If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend watch it. You'll get an idea about the future of virtual reality. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's it's a whole different industry by itself. So, but visual effects, or creating these virtual environments, it's all interlinked, and whatever skills you have, you could easily transfer that into virtual reality and augmented reality. And the final thing would be immersive experience. It's very closely related with virtual reality and augmented reality.